Lack of women's rights is an issue that has plagued the world ever since the beginning of humanity. In some way or another, it has affected both women and men in every expanse imaginable. Women have suffered through exclusion and lack of opportunity in politics, domestic abilities, and education. Because education is the basis of every achievement, it can be studied to show the extent of rights gained or still in need across the globe. In every region, men have had an advantage over women in education. It is simply a question of how great this advantage is and how one can overcome these obstacles. Malala Yousafzai is a very inspirational girl who's accomplished many things despite only being 17 years old. She's reminded the world of the power of education through her compassionate speeches, countless interviews, and courage. She's continuously raised her voice to access her right to education, as well as speaking up for many girls who desperately seek an education. As is the cause with all activists, there is a danger in speaking out. Yousafzai's story epitomizes this danger. Yousafzai is best known for when she was shot by the Taliban. Because of defending women's education, she was, and still is, a primary target. Ever since she was a child, Malala learned that education is a necessity and advocacy is a powerful tool. She was shot for attempting to attend school, and after a miraculous recovery, she became a women's rights spokesperson who won the Nobel Prize in 2014. Malala has performed countless acts to help raise awareness of women's rights, including speaking at UN conferences. She became the global voice for the Nigerian girls who were abducted by Boko Haram, even meeting with the president of Nigeria to urge him to meet with the parents. She has helped young people have a voice among world education leaders, and through her fund, the Malala Fund, has made a long-term commitment to girls' education in developing countries. Yousafzai has become a leader in women's education rights, but there is much more to be done. Just as Isra, a young girl from Iraq, said in an interview, women need to fight for their education and rights, especially in the Middle East, where they don't have a lot of rights in the first place. Men feel threatened by women having the power of an education, and they deal with this by restricting many rights like being able to drive, go out of the house alone, and go to school. School in Iraq is dangerous, and we need to change that. I have learned that people should not give up on anything, even if they have the most terrible life in the world. We need to join forces with girls around the world and fight for our rights as one. Education is a struggle for women everywhere. In Africa, they are neglected, traumatized, abused, and abandoned just because they are female. Muriel Muhigwa is an activist for women's education from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Muhigwa was 9 years old when she saw her friends and neighbors attacked by rebel invaders. The trauma led her to vow to help educate girls and will encourage to take out the fear and to take up the pens and books. She continued her education, seeing many of her classmates shot, raped, and killed. Through it all, she persisted and graduated last year. She was the only girl to pass with honors. Muhigwa has since become the Gender Program Officer for Samwaki, a program that helps educate young girls against sexual violence in rural areas. Just as Muhigwa said when we interviewed her, I fight for girls' education because I believe that when girls go to school, human rights will be respected. A better life will reign in every nation around the world. Girls are the future women, and women are the streams of life and education for each human being. When girls are educated, when their rights are respected, not only a nation changes, but the whole world becomes a better place for everyone to live. Education is the key to development, justice, and liberty. When asked what advice she would give young girls fighting for their education, she said, I would like to tell them to take courage, to never abandon. No matter all the problems or obstacles they can face, they must not fear, because fearlessness and courage is a weapon against every kind of violence. She is a fearless, peaceful leader who has stood up for her rights and for the rights of others. While these are two current examples from developing nations, the fight for women's rights began in the industrializing world. Throughout European history, women were not allowed to attend school. In London throughout the 1800s, women's education was discouraged, and most women only had the option of becoming a governess. By becoming an educational reformer, suffragist, author, and principal of the Cheltenham Ladies' College, Dorothée Beale was a leader that rose to the occasion in the face of this issue. After finishing her schooling in Paris, she later attended Queen's College for Women, which selected her as their first female mathematics tutor. After, she was elected head teacher at Clergy Daughters School in Casterton, but left after a year due to her failure to change the way the school was organized. Her major achievements include her success at Cheltenham Ladies' College, where under her leadership the school began to be considered one of the most highly regarded schools in Great Britain. At the time, most women's colleges emphasized the subjects of music and drawing, whereas Beale believed that women deserved the right to a more academic education. She used the success of the Cheltenham Ladies' College to support her later writings, which include a paper on the education of girls, which was read at the Social Science Congress of 1865. Beale was a leader in educational reform, breaking down barriers facing women in Europe. the Americas, many people have overlooked the importance of education for women. Education was, and still is, a big problem in America. Women did not have access to higher education before 1848. While a few women might attend a female seminary or academy, they were not allowed into colleges and universities. By 1890, 70% of all women in American colleges were enrolled in coeducational colleges. This is not to say that women in college were a significant part of the population. In 1870, only 0.7% of the female population went to college. There was a genuine fear that the good education would make a woman unfit for marriage and motherhood. Fear persisted for a long time in some minds. In the 1920s, when Eleanor Roosevelt's daughter Anna enrolled for 1 year in Cornell's School of Agriculture, her grandmother complained that girls who went to college were very apt to be old maids and become bookworms. Eleanor Roosevelt focused on reforming women's education. She even started a fund, the Eleanor Roosevelt Fund Award. The Eleanor Roosevelt Fund Award honors an individual, project, organization, or institution for outstanding contributions to equality and education for women and girls. The award is given for a broad range of activities including classroom teaching, education and research, and legal and legislative work in equality for women and girls. The fund has helped to ensure that even the poorest of girls can get an education, but the problem is not fixed just yet. Australia ratified the United Nations Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, or CEDAW, in 1983 and has recently taken steps to implement the Convention's articles fully, despite previous reservations about particular sections. Today, women are better educated than ever, and more of them, rather than men, complete university degrees, with 54.8% of tertiary students in 2006 being women, according to the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade in 2011. This is a part of the world where the goal of women's education seems to have been achieved. However, despite this, in the workplace, women still face inequalities. More women than men work part-time, while more men than women work full-time. Women are less likely than men to reach management ranks and positions of power within organizations. Despite legal cases regarding equal pay, there is still a gender wage gap. Mary Helen MacKillop was a leader in educational reform in Australia. She was able to receive an education mainly from private schools. To help her family, she became a shop girl, a governess, and at Portland, a teacher in the Catholic denominational school. She then founded a religious society, the Sisters of St. Joseph of the Sacred Heart, where she lived in poverty and devoted her life to educating poor children. At one point, she was almost excommunicated because of a conflict with clergy about educating girls. She traveled widely in Europe, visiting schools and observing methods of teaching to make herself better. She spread awareness about women's education and increased the literacy of girls all over the continent and became a well-recognized leader, but there is still work to be done. That was good. All of the people we have talked about are inspiring leaders who have changed the world in some way or another, and in doing so have left legacies. Since the attack on Malala, she has become known worldwide. Because of all her dedicated work towards women's education, she has inspired millions of people across the globe and has received plenty of awards, including the Nobel Peace Prize, Mother Teresa Award, United Nations Prize in the field of human rights, and many others. Her book, I Am Malala, the Girl Who Stood Up for Education and Was Shot by the Taliban, has sold millions of copies around the world. Muriel Muhigwa was the only one out of her class of all boys to graduate. She has helped many young girls through her program, Samwaki. Dorothea's college that she headed, the Cheltenham's Ladies' College, is still thriving today. Eleanor Roosevelt is consistently ranked by historians the most significant First Lady and even the most influential American woman of the 20th century. Mary Helen MacKillop has made a lasting change to Australia's society and is still studied by children around the continent. All of these people have influenced the world and will be remembered through their legacies. Because legacy is not what's left tomorrow when you're gone. It's what you give, create, impact, and contribute today while you're here that then happens to live on.